are happily people like that today that we can all learn from. I have no identification for this one. I pulled this one off the internet just because it was so delightfully retro. But I noticed they're not Freon tank helmets. They are, I'm not sure what they are, but they're not Freon tanks. This one is probably from Pennsic War 7. I say that only because if I move this whole thing over, you'd see me standing there in the armor of the period, and if I'm standing there in that position in front of an army exhorting them, I was working. You'll notice pole arms are finally starting to kind of show up. In fact, let's see. I had one much like that at my first SCA event ever in Rivenstar. We had a bridge fight. It was a 6-foot tall pole arm with that kind of head on it. It was heavy and about as hard as a pillow, but it was heavy. And we stumbled on this brilliant maneuver where we would have somebody kneel in front of me, and this bridge was only that high. So anyone coming up, just uncork them. And just sheer mass and inertia would usually topple them off. And we did away with like 5 or 6 guys like that. MRUM, the Sylvester, Mr. Agile comes out. Walks out, avoids the first one, surges in, kills the guy on the knees in front of me, surges back, and then looks at me, and I uncorked a big swing on him, and stepped back out of the way and watched me go flying off the bridge.
Little John on the log.
Yeah, physics is not my friend. Again, you're seeing some helms that are still Freon. You're seeing a lot more of the other stuff. This is from the 40th anniversary Pennsic War opening bout, Champions Fight. I can't tell you how proud I was to have a part in that. I'm fighting Manfred von Holstein. Actually one of my best friends in the East Kingdom. I agreed to fight as part of that Champions bout, provided I got to fight him, and I found out later independently he'd made the same statement about me. We'd never fought each other before. Wow. In all of our careers in the SCA, we had never knowingly fought each other. In fact, after we became friends, we made it a point that we would never draw a sword on the other on the battlefield. Which meant a lot of the people standing beside us got killed. But not us.
I was there that day, and you said some pretty powerful words before the fight.
Yeah, I wish I could remember what they were. Actually, I think it's probably on YouTube somewhere. But it was something to the effect that I had never been proud of, to stand as a representative of the SCA. And if I had to do it that way at the war, I wanted to be fighting somebody like that. And we had a little huddle beforehand, and the essence of it was, we don't give a rat's ass who wins this. We just want to give everybody a fight that they can be proud of and talk about for the next week. So that was absolutely the cleanest fight I could manage, while still trying to not shame myself. But that boiled down the SCA for me. That boiled down 40 years of SCA. That's what it was supposed to be. I want to kill my friend, I do not want to hurt him. I'd rather get hurt myself than bring dishonor upon myself, or the man I fight, or my kingdom. When actually, in the back of my mind, mostly there was one small sissy part of my heart just desperately saying, oh God, just don't let me screw this up. It was pretty fun.
I've seen the fight, and Your Grace, all due respect, you did not screw that fight.
Okay. We had fun with that fight. We were two old friends that were trying to kill each other. That was pretty much the gist of it. This was at Illiton, probably when I was Prince, perhaps the second time around. Florentine was curious. When I first joined the SCA, two-sword consisted usually of one short sword with maybe a thrusting tip that was used like a shield, and the other sword was just straight up broadsword, and that was your striking sword. It was basically you had one short skinny shield and a sword. Dukes of Paul and Bellatrix pioneered a lot of the more sophisticated styles out west, but I didn't get a chance to benefit from that. We had to sort of independently develop it here. And other people, I'm happy to say, have taken it farther than I ever thought. Albert von Dragenveld in the King's Tavern, fighting now the sadly late, much lamented Duchess Tsarina Death. To the best of my knowledge, she was the first Middle Kingdom queen to take the field in army at wars and raids. Not to say she was a great fighter, but she had a great heart. This, I think, is the first or second Pennsic War. I take that back. This would have been the first Pennsic War. That is one, I believe, of a couple of photos that were outtakes from a Time magazine article on the war. It actually is what alerted me to the fact that the SCA existed at someplace else other than California. I first heard about the SCA when I joined, or rather, when I read a novel by Poul Anderson, also known as Sir Bela of Westmarch, called The Broken Sword. And in the introduction, he mentioned the SCA. And I remember thinking at the time, oh, they're in California. I wish they were here. I found out from the Time article, okay, we can join. Hooray. Here we go. And however, it was still the better part of a year before I actually got to see anybody in the SCA face to face, after I had joined. I sent in my box tops and all that, and still it was like, this was before the internet. This was before Facebook. This was like trying to find the gates to Elfland. If you didn't know the spells, you couldn't get them to open, and you didn't know who to ask to get the spells. As luck would blindly have it, I found out at one point I was sitting next to a girl who had briefly been a part of the province of Treggerson. She put me in touch with the then Kingdom Seneschal, Richard Tatar. And from there, I got information. The first event we ever attended, I and 2 or 3 other people, was one of Vermwald's very early events. And I got to meet Paladin and Albert and Duxer and Andrew Duxer. At the time, Prince Duxer. This one pretty well is a good illustration for how things come and go in melees. For a long time, we started out, it's been fascinating watching the SCA evolve pretty much along historical lines. Because when I first joined the SCA, we were only about a quarter step up from the man-apes screeching and flinging poop at each other. And going at it one-on-one in couples, and if you won your fight, you got to go do a 2-on-1 with somebody, maybe. And if you didn't, well, you might be the 2-on-1, but it very quickly would resolve itself. And in some cases, if you won your 1-on-1, you'd stand around and wait for the other guys to get done, you know. From there, we kind of paralleled history. You started seeing very crude shield walls, you started seeing boars' snouts, you started seeing charges. And then one more Callantyr showed up with the Roman army. And doors the size of Rhode Island. And that became the next step in this escalating offense-defense contest. For a couple of years, you had to have somebody with big shields. You had to have some heavy infantry that you could form a solid, impenetrable wall. We started learning how to get around that with spearwork, barbs. There have been some great things that have risen and been banned at the Pennsic War over the years. We came up with barbs on our spears, little tiny hooks that you could use to hook atop of one of those. Let's go! And if you were lucky, you had a drawbridge going down with a guy behind it and a big hole in the line. We had one guy that showed up one year with a glass-style big suction cup on the end of his spear. He used it like a harpoon. If you had a smooth breastplate, you were a target.
They did, that was done on the fencing field at Pennsy a few years ago,
Yeah.
and that was,
Yeah.
Oh, it really wasn't
Squire
funny.
Decreased Mather, in a brilliant move, had big door shield, and we actually built several like this, and he put a 6-inch rim of sole leather at the top of it, which meant anybody that tried to hook it, it wouldn't work. Those were outlawed almost immediately.
The hooks or the shield?
The shields. The hooks are still in use. But over the years, we started out with poop flaming apes. We are now kind of sort of in the pike and musket era, on our best day. Occasionally, we still kind of unconsciously revert to the poop and the apes thing, but still, you'll see checkerboard patterns, you'll see actual formations. One of the things that did work spectacularly well, and I've never quite understood why we didn't revisit it, Kenna's War, the war where Kenna was queen. Jafar had sadly passed away just before that. We had numbers. We had a little bit of numerical superiority, but it still did not explain how well this tactic worked on the battlefield. We had, I believe, one of the Primarans was running that battle. And at the briefing, he outlined something that I thought at the time, you're out of your mind. But we'll give it our best shot. The Constellation Army, which is all I can speak for, followed the orders, and at the time we had a pretty disciplined bunch of guys who would actually do this. They lined up rank and file, 9 people wide, 8 deep. Just a little bit of space between every person. And the tactic was simple as mud, which was you key off your leaders in the front line, you maintain rank, you maintain file. We may hit it at a slow trot, but your speed is a fast walk once contact is made, and you do not stop under any circumstances. And it happened that way. The first line dissolved. Sir Ivar was the Constellation General, and he went down immediately along with a lot of other guys, but so did everybody in the front line, and their front line, and it blew a huge hole in their formation. The second line took some of that. The second line killed a lot of people. Half of them died. The third line killed a lot of people. I was in the third line. I came out the backside of that formation alive, still as part of a line. We lost a few guys. The guys in the fourth line, as people are going through, they're not stopping. So the lines in the other group, the people are turning around to try and engage, and they're getting hit by the line behind them. And it depended entirely on individual and group discipline. But it worked spectacularly well. We erased an Eastern division. And then turned around. They did an about face, back line became the front line, and they did it to another. At that point, we got enough attrition that we were probably done playing that maneuver. But I kept thinking, it's so stupid, it works well. It's simple. Von Clausewitz, the famous German general and tactician, once said that no battle survives contact with the enemy. I would submit that most of our battle tactics do not survive our guys putting their helmets on. Let's face it, if Brigadoon, we're not even weekend soldiers, if Brigadoon had a National Guard, we'd be it. So anything simple is by definition good. I would love to see that tactic come back. I would actually love to see, it's hard to do meaningful tactical drills for something on the scope and the size of the war. Because if you've got a couple of guys together, you don't really even have a line. If you've got 20 guys together, you're still nothing on that order. What are you going to do? Have 10 guys against 10 guys? Well, that particular maneuver, for example, doesn't work well. But trying to get people to trust each other and say, okay, I'm going to go down, I'm taking one for this army right now. I'm in the front line, my job is to keep moving forward no matter what. Third line was a vacation, it was great. That was the perfect place to be for that particular tactic in that fight. I swung an axe 6 times and killed 5 people. And most of them were cheap shots, they never saw it coming. The guys 2 rows back from me said that they couldn't find anybody to kill. And it wasn't because I was killing a lot of people. The people in my line were killing a lot of people who were disorganized and disoriented. The guys left standing by the time we got to them looked like they had an artillery round go off next to them. They were just, what the heck? They were disoriented, they were fragmented, it was great. All right. At this point, let's see what else I have missed in my breaking my promises. We have gained over the years, what we've gained, so more sophisticated armor, more sophisticated tactics by and large, and organization. God knows, we are more organized by orders of magnitude over what we were back then. My tactics as War King were revolutionary and shocking and completely effective. I told Torvald and Grimmy to take the Northwoods guys, wait until the rest of the army had engaged them, and then run around their right flank and take them from behind. And he did, and the whole place fell apart. That is what passed for brilliant tactics about 1976 or so. What?
We call that Plan A.
Yeah. But it's still a pretty good plan. It's just the other side so rarely cooperates anymore. As I said, it has parallel history. Each side, or offense and defense, we'll put it that way, have kept kicking things up a notch to counter. So it's always been rising. Individually, our fighting techniques now are just amazing compared to what they were when I first started out. But, lest any new fighter here get cocky about that, if we put you in the Wayback Machine and dropped you in 1973, not knowing what you know now, you'd still be the newbie. Because you, whether you know it or not, are standing on the shoulders of 20 generations of SCA fighters before you. Things will go around. There will be styles that come and go. Two-sword faded out. It came back, it faded out, it came back. Big shields came and faded out. Pole arms came and faded back, it came back. Bastard swords. Anything you can name. Right now, our current big kick is 6-foot spears. That's like the sexy weapon, you know? That may very well fade out and then probably come back. And I mentioned this once to Duke Surliaku, and I said it's like a merry-go-round. And bless his heart, he corrected me because I was wrong. He said, no, at its best, it's more like an upward spiral. Every time it comes around, the skill level's a little higher. What we've lost over the years. It's hard for me to say because I've said for many years that the longer you stay in the SCA, especially if you get to higher and higher rank, the more you see the sausage factory behind the hot dog. And I have managed to have fun in the SCA for all these years by hanging out with new people. And every time a new person comes in, I can see all this grand thing again through their eyes. The less you know about power structures, the more fun you're going to have. It just is that way. Also, although I see us kind of getting back, and I really hope it continues, we lose something by going on a war footing 24/7, 12 months out of the year. I hear this occasionally from Easterners who say, well, it's kind of a grind. Because, trust me, it didn't start out that way. And this is not meant to sound unhumble. I blame myself, at least in part, for that. At the 7th Penzig War, up until that point, you can look at the war points, the scores, and it's like 1 or 2 points more than the other side, 1 or 2 points more than the other side, tie. That war, there were 5 available war points, and the score was Middle Kingdom 5, East 0. And I was as ruthless as I could be on the field to try to make sure that we crushed them. And within about 2 years after that, you saw the Eastern War Machine really start to crank up. Because they really went away from that one feeling bad. And it should not have happened that way. I was young, I was proud, I was full of testosterone and things like that. And I did a good job as working. We won that war. But sometimes I wish we hadn't won it quite as hard. Because it's fun to be part of a tournament. It's fun to be part of a bigger ideal. We are not the Middle Ages. We learn a lot about the Middle Ages. We learn a lot about the practical stuff in the Middle Ages. We learn a lot about experiential stuff in the Middle Ages. My underwear is not period, but by God, I know what it feels to stand like and lead a 1,000-man charge that shakes the ground. And people can still do that, but we're built on some ideals. I grew up watching 1950s Westerns. Those were my ideals. Those were the good guys. Those were the guys that were faster. They were stronger. They were better shots. They were better fist fighters than anybody else. But they would take on the guys that would take on the people who couldn't fight back. And I realized later, after getting into the SCA, oh yeah, I need to be a knight. Because that's what that's supposed to be. So this is a wonderful organization.